In this video, I want to show you how I would go about scraping the data from this site and the importance of actually getting the information or finding the best way to get the information from a site. So if I was to open up this product, you can see we have all these different color selectors and sizes, and this is just not feasible to try and load up and pass HTML. There's almost always a better way. We have to understand how the site works. Already I'm looking at the URL and I can see some query string, query parameters like a color and something here called DW-var with a code. Now this gives me a good idea that I can actually start to have a look around the site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and open up the inspect tool. I'm going to go to network and make sure I've got XHR selected. So I'm going to hit reload. And we're going to have a look. Now, we're not actually going to really see anything here. We have something going on here, but the best advice I've got for you when you're doing this is to just start clicking around. You can see I've already got product variations popping up down here, and this is what I want to look at.
So I don't scrape at all anymore unless I'm behind a proxy. As I know to scale up my projects, I need to use proxies. So in testing, I try a few different settings and select the best option for that use case. So this video is sponsored by ProxyScrape, friends of the channel, and the proxies that I use myself. We get access to high quality, secure, fast, and ethically sourced proxies that cover residential, data center, and mobile, with rotating and sticky session options. There's 10 million plus proxies in the pool to use, all with unlimited concurrent sessions from countries all over the globe, enabling us to scrape quickly and efficiently. I use a variety of proxies depending on the situation, but I'd recommend you start out with residential ones and make sure you select countries that are appropriate to the site you're trying to scrape. And I always try and match my browser location where possible. This gives you the best chance of passing anti-bot detection and getting the data that you need. Also consider using the sticky sessions and keeping the same proxy for 3 to 5 minutes. Either way though, it's still only one line of code to add to your project, and then we let ProxyScrape handle the rest. And any traffic you purchase is yours to use whenever you need, as it doesn't ever expire. So if this all sounds good to you, go ahead and check out ProxyScrape at the link in the description below. Let's get back to our project.
So I'm going to hover, I'm going to click on one of these and we'll have a quick look at what we've got going on here to make this a little bit bigger. So we can see from this URL at the top here that we have a sort of like a query parameter thing. We've got like this thing here, the size, product ID probably that is, and a color. And if I look at the response, you can see that we have all the product information. Now, for general scraping, where you want the information for your personal reasons or whatever like that, this is without doubt the best way, if this is available. And you'll be surprised how often it is, especially on e-commerce sites like this. You'll generally find that you don't have to do a lot to get this information because their front-end site needs to talk to their back-end to get that product information and bring it up to be rendered into the page. Now this means that we have this JSON data which has everything in that we could possibly want, and we just need to basically make this request as well at the same time. So I'm going to copy this out here and we'll come back to our browser and I paste this in, and we'll see here, if I make this full screen, that we have this information in our browser as well. And what's interesting with this is, of course, we can change the information here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the colorway and I'm going to remove all of the stuff after here as well. Start chopping bits off and see what we get to. Okay, so that's no good. Let's get rid of the size. Let's remove this and just go to the product ID part. So anything like after the and, because obviously the and's changing the parameters. Okay, that worked. So I can see here we have variation attributes. We can see that it has the color attributes with the name. So that's useful. And then the variant data. So from here, what we could do is we could just save this JSON and we could pass through and we could like build up some kind of database that, color value 281 is this color. And if we then looked at the variant data for the specific product, what did I say, 281? 281, here we go, and you can see that we have all the product information. It's quite rare to get this piece of information, but it's here on this site. So using this, you could monitor this and you could then work out sales, assuming that this gets updated regularly, which I expect it will do. So now we've talked about what information we can get and where it's coming from. We need to look at how easy or how accessible it is to us and what we need to do to get this. So I mentioned that we needed to basically mimic this request here to get that information. So I'm just going to look down through the response headers and the request headers. I can see right away we have, there's this Cloudflare here, which is important to us. We have our response cookie, and we have our request headers here. So if we look, we can see we just have this user agent. Now there's not that many headers here. This is a good place to look to see. You can find out what sort of bot protection is going on here. And this just looks like basic Cloudflare to me. In fact, I'm not even seeing the Cloudflare cookie. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this URL. I'm going to come over to my terminal and I'm just going to do curl on this URL, and it works. So now this is actually more common than you think. So there's all the sorts of core stuff, and a lot of sites will be more protected, but finding ones like this is actually pretty common. The difference is if they are protected and you get an error when you run curl, you need to copy the whole request here. So copy value as curl, and then use curl converter, the website, to give you the sort of the information, all the headers and cookies and everything. From there, you need to, which is out of scope of this video, you can use those cookies until they expire. And then what I would do is I would run an automated browser just to get new ones. And there's plenty of packages that will do that for you if you want to get there. One thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pipe this into JQ just so it's a bit neater and we can see everything there. So if I was to put this into scroll mode, tmux please, scroll mode, there we go. We can see all the information. So this has got everything that we want. So now we know how what information is and how we're going to get it, we can start to build up some code to actually do it for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear this up, and I'm in my project folder, and I have tmux running with 2 shells and 2 separate instance shells, so I'm going to be able to have my code in one and then run my code in the other. It's just easier than closing your text editor all the time. So let's do Python 3-mvenv VENV to create my virtual environment, and I'm going to activate it here, and I'm also going to activate it here before I forget. So we're going to need a few things to help us with this. So I'm going to do pip3 install, and we're going to use requests. I always use rich just because it's easier, and I'm actually going to be using, because I haven't talked about this yet, Beautiful Soup. Now this is quite, that's probably going to fail. I think it should be Beautiful Soup 4. Yeah, there we go. So there's a reason why, and I've skipped over this, which I shouldn't have done. There's a reason why I'm going to be using Beautiful Soup. And I mentioned it when I talked about product ID. So I'm going to close this. So I'm talking about the product ID here, which is this number. Now we need to get these product IDs to be able to visit this page. So what I'm going to do is always the first thing that I do is go to robots.txt. And it's not why you think it is. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to come here, sitemap. This is the most important piece of information for me. And we can see here we have categories and we have a product sitemap. So I'm going to go to that. And this is going to hold all the links to the products with their URLs. Now we need the product ID, not the URL, but you can see that they all have it in them somewhere. This is the product ID. So if I copy this and put this in here where it's got the old ID, and run it again, we should get it back, and we have this product instead here. So I should have put that in at the start, but you'll get this far and you'll understand. So this is where the product IDs are going to come from. It's the sitemap, so we need to keep that in mind. And it's because of that sitemap that I'm going to use Beautiful Soup 4 to parse that sitemap. I'm not going to be passing any other HTML for anything. So I think I do need to install LXML because I'm going to need to parse that. Cool. So let's create our file. We'll just call this main.py, and let's open it up. Fantastic. So I'm going to import the things that I need. So it's going to be requests, and then from BS4, we're going to import Beautiful Soup because we want to get that sitemap passed. I'm going to import rich, but what we're going to do is we're going to do from rich, we're going to import logging. What I'm going to just quickly do is, and I always do this and I never remember it. Every time I go and copy and paste something from a site, I never remember how to do it myself. So let's just go ahead and grab these. We're going to be using logging in our code. So we're going to be using rich to log, which is just a neater way of showing your logs, and it formats it all for you really nicely. So that's exactly what I'm going to use. So I'm probably going to hold my data in a data class. Quite often you'll see me use Pydantic for this, but in this instance I'm going to use data classes. So we'll do from data classes, we'll import in the Python data class, and also we're going to need to, I'm going to import in time, and I'm also going to import in RE for regex. Now this is important because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use regex to pull the product ID out of the URL here. Just a nice easy way, very, very simple regex to do so. So this is the start of our code. We want to start thinking about how we're going to do this now. Now, quite often these days, what I'll do is I will create a function that's going to sort of create my session object for me. So I'm going to call this create session because I want to load up my request session with all headers that I need, the proxies that I'm going to use, and anything else. So then I can just run this function at the start, and it's going to give me that session object, and it's going to keep it nice and neat. So this is going to be, this is fine actually. So now we'll say our session is going to be equal to the request.session. This is creating the main object, and then I'm going to do session.headers.update. I'm going to do this because I still want to like be as, mimic the request as much as possible. So what you can do is take the request that you've got here, do that curl converter, and you'll end up with some headers that you can use. I'm going to copy them from over here because otherwise I'll be forever. So I'm going to paste these in here. Now, there's nothing special about these headers. They're very standard. It's going to be, my user agent and some sort of typed accepts. This is just a safeguard against any issues that I may have. Not always necessary. You need to play around with the headers and find out which ones you do and do not need. In this case, maybe we don't need any, but we'll include them. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to include our proxy. I always scrape with my proxy. So I'm going to do session.proxies.update, and this is going to be a dictionary, and it's going to have the HTTP proxy and then the HTTPS version 2, like so. Now I import my proxies from my environment, so I'm going to do import OS. If you don't do that, that's absolutely fine. You just need to put the proxy string in here as text, but because I pulled it from my environment, I'm going to do os.getEnv, and I'm going to say my proxy here. This is my residential proxy. We will start with that one. Should we have any issues, we can try a different one. I find this to be just a neat way of getting it. Now it's going to complain at me. I don't need that. So because it's going to complain at me, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say proxy is going to be equal to os.getEnv. Oh, we should have just typed it. There we go. Proxy, and we'll just do if proxy is none. So if it doesn't find it, we will just raise an exception. No proxy found in the system. And that needs to be in our brackets. So this is just me handling the problem with it showing here. So now I can get rid of this. And this will just mean that if I don't have a proxy, it doesn't find the proxy in my environment, it just stops rather than carries on, which is fine by me. There we are. So that's a bit neater. Now I can return this session object out. So we're going to have this now. So this, when we run this function, we'll have a session that has all of our stuff in, all of our headers and our proxies all ready for us. What I might do actually in here is I'll do logging.info, and we can just have a session created with proxies. And we need to do one more thing, which I've just forgotten about here, is to set the level in my logging here. Now we want to get all of the IDs from the sitemap. So I'm going to create a function that's going to say scrape sitemap. And this is going to take in my session, which is a requests.session type. And it's also going to take in a URL, which will just be a string. Then I'm going to say we want our product IDs to be stored into a list. Let's put this in the middle of the screen so we can all follow along. And then we say response is equal to the session that we've got it, .get on the URL. Now this is going to use the session that I've created, and we're going to be able to reach out and get that data. So I'm going to do response.raise for status. It's just a handy way. If you get an error, it will just show you that error, and you'll know that it was a 403 or something if you've got any of those, which would be the problem. So now we can move on to our soup. So it's going to be equal to beautiful soup and a response.text. And our URLs are going to be equal to soup.findAll. I thought it was find all like that. No, it's the one with that. I think like that. Find all. I think they might be the same, but they might be a bit different. And then we want to find all LOC. And that's because when we go through the sitemap here, we want to find every one of these nodes here because that's got the URL in. So now we need to talk about our regex. So we want to just quickly loop through these actually. So we'll do for URL in URLs. And we want to think about our regex. Now, I'm going to say that our IDs are going to be equal to re.findAll, and we need to pass in our regex there, and then our URL.text, because that's going to be a node still. To get this regex to work, we do R, and because we want to then find everything that is a digit, and so on, we just use this. And why is this complaining? Attribute text is not known. That's interesting. Let's carry on. I think we'll do for ID and IDs. I must have missed something. That'd be all right. We'll find out. And then I want to do if length of the ID is equal to 7, we want to add this to our list. Product IDs dot append our ID. And the reason why I want to do 7 is because I want this number here. So if it's one that's not that length, or there's a number that's not that length, I want to just discard it. So here's a demonstration of the regular expression. So, it'll pick up this one and this one, so we'll discard match 1 that isn't 7 characters long, which is why I've done this here. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to do logging.info, and we'll just say that we want to make this an F string, and we'll say length of the product IDs list, found and ready to scrape, or ready to process. It's probably a better option. Let's say ready to process. Cool. Right. Then, I just need to return out of this list, and I need to return this list out so we have access to it. Return our product IDs list. Right, I'm going to test this out now. So I'm going to run I'm going to call a main function. This is going to have our session, which is going to equal to our create session function. Save that. And then I want to do the sitemap URL. Let's grab that here, and we'll do our product IDs can be equal to scrape the sitemap with our session and our URL, and we will then just logging.info these product IDs. I think that'll be fine. Right, so now we need our if name is equal to done the main, and I'll run my main function. So now we have access to that going ahead. Right, there will be something wrong in this, I imagine. I've probably skipped far too far ahead. So I've got my session created with proxies, and I've got an error here. Got tag, so I needed that .text in here, because we want to look for the text here. I don't know if it's complaining. Let's see what happens now. There we go. Right, so that did work. I don't know why it was complaining about not that. So you can see now I have 183 ready to process, and here are all my product IDs. It would probably be worth verifying these or storing these IDs somewhere if you're going to repeat this. But all I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this list to actually then make the request to scrape the data. So now I have this list. I don't know why this is complaining at me. Oh, I see. Type hints. I've called URL too many times. I should have called this sitemap URL. Like so. Oh, no. Like this. So that's clearer what that is. And then I can say that this has to be a string. Yeah. Too many times using the same word. Right, cool. So in between this function and this one, we want to create a new function. So there we want to say something like, we'll call it, we started with scrape, we'll call it scrape product data. And again, this is going to take in our session, which is a type of request.session. And the reason why I do this is so I get autocomplete. And I'm also going to take in a product ID and we'll put this as a string for the moment. So I'm going to say that my URL is going to be the one from here, this one. And we need to make this into an f string. So go back to the string here. So f string. And we want to fill in the product ID in the right parts of the URL with an f string. You can do this with parameters as well. Obviously, in some cases that's better. This is fairly straightforward, so I'm just going to do it like this. I'm just going to make sure I get this right. Product ID. It goes in there. And here at the end as well. I'm leaving the color blank. I probably could get rid of that parameter. We'll leave it like this for the moment. And now we want to do response is equal to session.get, and we want to give it the URL. Again, I'm going to use response.raise for status to catch any of those errors. We'll just raise them up basically. And then I'm going to return out response.json, but I'm also going to have a quick look here because I'm going to go straight into the product part of the data. So we have this here, so I don't want anything outside of this, so I'm just going to return that there. So I'm going to say product like so. I think I want to log this out now. So what I'm going to say instead is I'm just going to say starting to get product data, and we'll say now we can do for ID in product IDs, we can our response JSON is going to be equal to the outcome of our scrape product data, which is going to take in the session and the ID. Then I'm going to do print response. Actually, we'll stick with the logging theme. Logging.info. It will be response.json. No, response JSON. I'm confusing myself now. And I want to go and just quickly print out the tile name. Tile name? That's interesting. Tile name it will be. Tile name, like so. So hopefully now, I'm going to do time.sleep in here so we can see what's going on. Just give ourselves a few seconds. Let's clear this up and run, and we should start to see the information come through. I've spelled the key wrong. It's capital. I believe it is. And I need to put into my here. This is where I need to do what is it called? What did it say? Features. So we're going to pass features in here as XML. Was it in like that? Yeah. And that way, that should just suppress that error. Yep. Perfect. So we can see that's one in product. So it's a different one. Should probably make it less than 2 seconds. Otherwise, we'll be here forever watching this go through. Great. So I'm pretty confident now I'm getting the different information through, which I think is pretty cool. So what I want to do is I'm going to cancel this now, and we're going to go ahead and create our data class to hold the information. So I'm going to say at data class, and this is going to be a class of product. Now let's have a look at the information that we want to get out. So there is a lot of information in here, and it's up to you to go through how you want to decide that you want to store this. For me, if I'm really leaning on the variants, I'm going to create data classes for variants. I'm going to store those as well. But for this example, I'm going to ignore the variant data, and I'm just going to get the base product information. You could also put the variant data as just a dictionary stored in the data class if you wanted to. That would also work quite well. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab some of the basic information. So somewhere around here, there should be, I'm looking for price. Here we go. So let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. We don't need any of that. So we want price, and we'll have ID, name, price, and There must be some rating, for example. So I've chosen these bits of information. I've just copied them over so you don't have to watch me type this out. ID name, primary category, pitch, average rating, and price. This is all information in here, which you've probably seen along the way. So now we just need to fill in the information that comes back from this, which is going to be, the response JSON, which we want to now put into our data class. And that's as simple as basically just constructing it. I've just gone through and just chosen, these are the fields that I want. I decided not to go with the variant data in the end. And I've then put a log in here. So we can now see this information coming through. This is just a case of filling in the information that you like. This is what you have to do with data classes, which is why I tend to lean into Pydantic a little bit more, because you can basically just throw the JSON data at it and it fills it in for you. If you can just unpack it into the Pydantic class rather, and anything that isn't within the class itself gets discarded. But this is fine. This makes use of Python's built-in data classes, which do work fine, which will work well as well. Right, so I'm going to go ahead now and save this, and we're going to come over here, clear the screen up, and we're going to run this out. Okay, so we can see all the information coming out. And what you're looking at is rich logging, just doing all of this for us, date, level, and the information that I've put in. I would definitely recommend using logging over print, because once it comes to running this on a server somewhere or running it more often, you can just pipe all this into a file, a log file, and it'll all be there ready for you. You can see if anything went wrong or anything like that. So I'm just going to stop this because I don't need to carry on. From here, I think I'm going to leave this code as it is. I think this is not bad. This is a pretty decent 100 lines of code, 98, to go ahead and pull this information out. The most important points that I wanted to share were having a look around the site and figuring out how you're going to get to the point that you want to get to. So for me, in this case, it was working out that I could go ahead and go to this URL along with changing the product IDs in it, and the fact that I didn't really need to do anything to get there other than maybe even copy some headers, but even that was dubious. Then I found out that I wanted to get the IDs that way. So because I wanted to get the IDs to fill that URL in to get the data, I started looking and I found the sitemap. And then I pulled it out of there. Quick regex to get the numbers out, and a little bit of if the length is equal to, just to make sure I got the right number. Otherwise, we'd have had a load of like 2023 and 2024 in there, which would have caused issues. And that's basically it. Yeah, this is fairly straightforward, and this is the sort of thing that I would recommend that you start looking at scraping. You don't need to go as in-depth as me. You don't need to do all the different functions. You can basically just have it much more simplified. Make a request to this URL. See if you can get the JSON data out that you want, find the IDs, and go from there. So hopefully you've benefited from this video, got something out of it. I really want to provide as much value as I can. This is how I scrape a lot of information on a personal level. If you want to scale it up, it becomes a bit more of a different conversation, which I will try to have in a different video. But hopefully you have enjoyed this. If you have, like and comment really does help me, and subscribe would be great as well. I'm getting close to a really great subscriber milestone personally for me, and I really appreciate everybody that's watched and subscribed. So yeah, thank you very much, and I will see you again in the next one.